War is an incredible teacher, a brutal teacher, and it teaches you lessons that you will not forget. And unfortunately, war teaches you the most when things go wrong. And for me, one of the most impactful lessons that I learned from war was in the spring of 2006 in the city of Ramadi, Iraq, where brutal and determined terrorists ruled the streets with torture and rape and murder. And it was in one neighborhood of that city during an operation that I was in charge of when all hell broke loose. We had multiple units out on the battlefield fighting the enemy. We had friendly Iraqi soldiers, we had US Army soldiers and US Marines, along with small elements of my SEAL team. And then the fog of war rolled in with its confusion and chaos and mayhem, and with its gunfire and enemy attacks and screaming men and blood and death. And in that fog of war, through a series of mistakes and human error and poor judgment and Murphy's Law and just plain bad luck, a horrendous firefight broke out. But this firefight, it wasn't between us and the enemy. This firefight, tragically, was between us and us. Friendly forces against friendly forces. Fratricide, the mortal sin of combat. And when it was over and the fog of war lifted, one friendly Iraqi soldier was dead, 2 more were wounded, one of my men was wounded, the rest of my SEALs were badly shaken. And it was reported up the chain of command what had happened, that we had fought and wounded and killed each other. And when we got back to base, things didn't get much better. There was a message waiting for me from my commanding officer, and it said, shut down all operations. It said that the commanding officer, the master chief, and the investigating officer were inbound to my location, and they told me to prepare a debrief to explain exactly what had happened on the operation and what had gone wrong. Now, I knew what this meant. It meant that somebody had to pay. It meant that somebody had to get fired for what had happened. I walked into the debriefing room, asked them one simple question. Whose fault was this? One of my SEALs raised his hand, and he said it was my fault. I didn't keep control of the Iraqi soldiers I was with, and they left their designated sector, and that was the root of all these problems. And I said, no, it wasn't your fault. And then another SEAL raised his hand, and he said, boss, this was my fault. I didn't properly identify my target, and I shot and killed that friendly Iraqi soldier. This was my fault. And I said, no, this wasn't your fault either. And it wasn't yours or yours or yours, I said as I pointed to the rest of the SEALs in the room. And then I told them that there was only one person at fault for what had happened. There was only one person to blame, and that person was me. I am the commander, I am the senior man on the battlefield, and I am responsible for everything that happens. Everything. And I will tell you something, it hurt. It hurt my ego. It hurt my pride to take the blame. But I also knew that to maintain my integrity as a leader and as a man, I had to take responsibility. And in order to do that, I had to control my ego so that my ego did not control me. And you know what? I didn't get fired. In fact, my commanding officer, who had expected excuses and finger pointing, when I took responsibility, when I took ownership, he now trusted me even more. And my men, they didn't lose respect for me. Instead, they realized that I would never shirk responsibility, and I would never pass that heavy burden of command down the chain and onto them. So I say, take ownership. Take extreme ownership. Don't make excuses. Don't blame any other person or any other thing. Get control of your ego. Don't hide your delicate pride from the truth. Take ownership of everything in your world, the good and the bad. Take ownership of your mistakes. Take ownership of your shortfalls. Take ownership of your problems. And then take ownership of the solutions that will get those problems solved. Take ownership of your job, of your team, of your future, and take ownership of your life.
don't matter whose fault it is that something is broken, if it's your responsibility to fix it. For example, it's not somebody's fault if their father was an abusive alcoholic, but it's for damn sure their responsibility to figure out how they're going to deal with those traumas and try to make a life out of it. It's not your fault if your partner cheated and ruined your marriage, but it is for damn sure your responsibility to figure out how to take that pain and how to overcome that and build a happy life for yourself. Fault and responsibility do not go together. It sucks, but they don't. When something is somebody's fault, we want them to suffer. We want them punished. We want them to pay. We want it to be their responsibility to fix it, but that's not how it works, especially when it's your heart. Your life, your happiness is your responsibility and your responsibility alone. As long as we're pointing the finger and stuck in whose fault something is, we're jammed and trapped into victim mode. When you're in victim mode, you are stuck in suffering. The road to power is in taking responsibility. Your heart, your life, your happiness is your responsibility and your responsibility alone.
You know, the day you start taking responsibility for what happens to you is the day you will start controlling what actually happens to you. You know, most of the people I meet in my seminars are saying, well, hey, so-and-so won't let me do this, or my wife won't let me do this, or my husband won't let me do this, or my boss won't let me do this. Folks, the moment you assign responsibility to another human being is the same moment that you accept never to be in control of your own life. This week, put yourself back in responsibility of everything that happens to you. The car wreck, the nick on the car, you know, you get overcharged for something. Everything, the argument with your spouse, okay? Your kids don't get to school on time because of the bus. That was your fault. The moment you can take responsibility for everything, the lost deal, the people that didn't get approved, the moment you can take responsibility for everything is the moment you will start controlling your life, your customers, and your outcomes. Take responsibility, increase it. Look everywhere. I get a cold or a cough. Hey, how was I responsible for that? It wasn't because I sat on a plane with 223 people that were sick. Well, hey, I'm the one that bought the ticket. I'm the one that got on the plane. Take responsibility, increase it, increase control in your life. Get control of this by increasing your responsibility.
Self-reliance is basically counting on yourself, taking responsibility for whatever happens to you, knowing that you have consciously made the decisions that are now affecting you, knowing that what is happening now, today, is the direct result of your activity, what you did yesterday. Now, being self-reliant doesn't mean you can't work with others or trust others. Self-reliance means counting on yourself, trusting yourself, being confident with yourself, being responsible to yourself, trusting your own instincts, trusting the conclusions that you have developed from your study of experiences and philosophies, taking the credit that is due you, learning from the mistakes that you have made, being self-reliant. Some people tend to blame others for their mistakes, blame others for their failures. Somebody says, it's not my fault the report isn't done, so-and-so didn't do their part. Of course it's your fault. It's your report too. It's your responsibility to see that everyone you delegated work to does their part. Now, you can't control what others around you do, but it's in your own best self-interest that you stay on top of things, especially if it's going to affect your future. Be responsible for the things that affect you. When you change, when you get better, it'll get better. If you change, it'll all change. Don't put it on someone else. Hope that someone else will change it for you. Take responsibility for yourself. Take personal responsibility. You've got to take personal responsibility. You've got to be self-reliant. Nobody else can change your life, alter your ambitions, pave a golden road for you. But you can. It's up to you. Be responsible for yourself. Take full responsibility for everything you do. Be responsible to yourself.